Okay, scholars, here we are again, looking at Timothy. Just enjoy this picture. All right, now, what we need to talk about is this article here. Okay, this is if I was known we were going to be all separated from each other, I would have never given the set of readings that we've got. But they're okay. What they are things I wrote. I wrote this when I was a young punk assistant professor or something. What's it say down here? I gave this at Kentucky here. Down here, paper. See, I was teaching there. This is 1990. Yeah, I'm probably an associate professor, I suppose, by then. But the thing is, just a young punk, and I was doing specific stuff about, especially thinking. I wrote that Art of Thinking book that you're going to read from too, and logic textbooks. It's pretty dang boring stuff, and it's very particular stuff. But it gets at big issues: how to think, and especially how mathematics comes into logic, and mathematics comes into rhetoric of persuasion, and mathematics comes into thinking skills. And so, yes, let's read it, let's work with it, and let me just point out some key issues in it for you to look to as you're reading, and I'll give a little commentary on it. But here's the deal: is you got this rise of mathematics, and so rooted in the Renaissance revival of Pythagorean and Platonic beliefs, justified in the new Cartesian method of inquiry, the intellectual prestige of mathematics rose during the same period that the increasing influence of skepticism diminished the certainty of any form of knowledge not built upon mathematical foundations. Okay? So what's going to happen is, we're going to look at the folks who try and argue for Christianity in this. And the key people are Rene Descartes. This is where we get the term Cartesian. Comes from Descartes, Cartesian thought. Just tremendous thinker, and Zion's writing a paper about him. And then the key people are Blaise Pascal and Antoine Arnaud. Arnaud is the way I think you usually pronounce that. It's French. So these are the key people in the essay, and what you have is Blaise Pascal and Antoine Arnaud are trying to do something here. So the importance, here's where my theme statement is. Okay, this is the theme of the essay. The importance of this lies primarily in the wide influences of these books written by these two guys for 2 centuries on Christians seeking assurance against skeptics who denied the certainty of knowledge, and on apologetic arguments for the rationality of believing in Christianity. So these 2 books, the Pensées and the Point Royal Logic, Point Royal Logic is a textbook, and so incredibly influential in schools, but not well known. Whereas the Pensées becomes sort of a classic of, everybody reads the Pensées, and Pascal is way more famous in this. And so over here is where you get the contribution. The contribution of this article is placing Pascal's mathematics more fully in the context of Cartesian logic, and advances in the use of infinity and showing the parallel apologetic role of the Port Royal logic. Okay, and so this is where I state what I'm doing. I'm making a contribution here of really biggest contribution is to connect how much the Port Royal logic connects to Pascal's Pensées, and what becomes what's called Pascal's wager, which we'll talk about soon. Okay, so basically then you have skepticism. Big issue of skepticism and dogmatism is these two sides of things. One is the people who dogmatics are people who insist on things. Skeptics are saying that they don't want to believe anything. That's the basic problem. And then in the midst of this comes the Jansenists. Okay, and so what you see is, where is it? Okay, here we go. Arnaud and Pascal were Jansenists. So Jansenists, it's a really interesting bunch of Catholics who almost set up a sort of separate order, and they they get repressed. There's all sorts of politics around it. The Jansenists are famous for a lot of different things, but Arnaud is the most greatest intellect of the Jansenists, and then Pascal comes along, and Pascal then joins in, and so Pascal and Arnaud, two most famous Jansenists, and boom, biddy, boom, boom, they are followers of Augustine. Jansen was a guy who insisted that you got to revive Augustine into the whole Catholic structure. Part of the struggle with the French, the politics and Catholic Church in France, is that Catholic Church in France is committed to a whole bunch of things that Pelican talked about, like the development of sacraments and stuff like that. That whole section beyond Augustine in Pelican, beyond the Augustinian synthesis. Jansenists want to go back to the Augustinian synthesis. And so in that sense, the Jansenists are perceived to be a threat in many ways, like the Protestant reformers are perceived to be a threat. And so the Jansenists will be repressed. There's all sorts of fun politics to all of this sort of thing. Okay, so, but what we're dealing with is these two tremendously influential books, the Pensées and the Port Royal Logic. Port Royal was a place where the Arnaud family, which was the Jansenist center, sort of hung out and kept things going. Okay, so, you jump along here and move along, and I give a lot of really good information, but you don't feel like you're overwhelmed with factoids. You are, but you're not going to be responsible for it. Another guy comes along here, and that's this development of method, and Ramus is the guy, and then Descartes' going to have his discourse on method, his most famous book. And this term method is going to become huge for logic, for thinking, for everything. And you know it, of course, because it develops into the Methodists. This is the Wesley, and we are a Wesleyan university. Wesley was highly influential by this methodical thinking and disciplined thinking and stuff like that. And so the Methodists come out of this, but everybody's talking method. And that's why you have all sorts of very interesting developments in what we call methodology, which is the study of various methods. Okay, the term is usually used wrong, but you never want to use methodology for a single method. Just call it a method. Methodology is the study of methods, and you have plural methods. Okay, so we move on, and here again, this is good for Descartes. The tremendous influence of Descartes, and then what we have is over here, on this side here, is for Pascal and Arnaud, proper use of geometrical method was dependent upon, bada bing, the will. This is that huge thing we've been talking about all the way through, is postmodernists think that they're so hip and cool because they've rejected, the idea that logic is some sort of, adamant, box. But the thing is like they're not hip and cool. They're just adopting what was a great Augustinian, medieval, and so what Pascal and Arnaud are here doing is that through Jansenism is pulling that Augustinian use of the will. You've got to be the will is what's crucial. So skeptics, hear about the skeptics. They're a sect of liars. That comes straight out of Augustine. They deny their consciousness. They deny that they can know anything and stuff like that. And so both Arnaud and Pascal are trying to find a sort of middle ground between gullibility and absolute skepticism. And what can we use? And how can we use mathematics? That's the new thing. Aristotle and Augustine could care less about mathematics, but no, Pascal and Arnaud, Descartes want very much to use mathematics, which makes them way modern, way up there like us. So what we want to move then is then over to here and see how, okay, here I restate my point. Pascal and Arnaud differed, however, in that their fundamental question of Euclidean geometry were certain. It was on the issue that this issue that they split. They split as to how certain they can be. Pascal becomes real wishy-washy, and part of the beauty of his rhetoric and everything else is that he's just beautiful to read. Everybody should read Pascal. Arnaud is a more logical thinker and pushes things a little harsher, and he pushes that we can be more confident and claim certainty, a specific kind of certainty. All right? So here we go. Pascal accepted the position of the skeptics that this meant that humans could not attain an impregnable certainty. Arnaud, on the other hand, admitted no such uncertainty. Okay, so that's sort of what's the real key issue here as we set this all up. And then you come over here, is we've got to be careful of how we delineate between doubt, science, and faith. Okay, and then the real issue, doubt, science, and faith. And the real issue then is to come up with what do we have to submit to? What's an argument that creates a compelling argument that you can persuade people, you can force people to submit to it, and that becomes then the use of infinity. And there's this where to submit category is so crucial. Where do you feel certain? And then so for these guys, they're going to use mathematics down here. So use the concept of infinity came to be understood. Rather, it means only that the concept was being used mathematics for the first time. Concept of infinity takes a long time. It's not till the 19th century that you have a mathematical sort of consistent use of infinity. But infinity is one of these great things that goes way back deep into history, causing problems, intellectual problems. It goes back to Zeno and guys like that. All right. So the issue is that they're using infinity as a quantity. It's not just a philosophical concept anymore. This new mathematics of probability that is coming in. So you have, and this is a way cool thing. I always love this as Pascal and Arnaud, but especially Pascal puts it that humans are finite. And what we need to do is see ourselves as hanging between infinite hugeness and infinite smallness, And this is who we are. And I think this is one of the great things about history is we sort of think about this. We live in this world of middleness, We are not epistemologically founded in super strong knowledge, and yet on the other hand, we hang from a pendulum of just great truth. So we're in the middle there. All right, so you go over here and we start to then look at the questions of infinity and how infinity gets applied to apologetics, especially this idea of deciding what is prudent. What's the prudent decision? And so what they're working with is they're doing probability theory. Yeah. Okay, and then this probability theory, they're applying mathematics. There's some great footnotes here and stuff to this. Great literature out there on all this going on. 17th century is fascinating. And so then Pascal comes up with what is this famous Pascal's wager. And basically what you do is you take infinity as a quantity, and you put it into the argument of if heaven and salvation are infinite, you see, that's what you've taken eternity and turned eternity into an infinity, a quality into a quantity. And then once eternity and infinite is a quantity, then you can say, okay, let's put it into a probability structure. And of course, anything finite life, you want to bet on the infinite. So the math just sort of blows up the whole thing. It's a great thing, and that's the argument here that Pascal and Arnaud come up with. Just for your own, knowledge or whatever, just here, I'll just share with this section right here. This although paragraph, this is where, man, I think this is where I've said something, as far as I know, back in 1990, I think I came up with something that no one else has ever known, which is the influence of Arnaud's argument on Pascal, and the possibility, if you go down here, in my footnote, about these guys. And so, so if you want to get into that I think is a real contribution to the brick and mortar building of knowledge in the world. But who cares? No one reads me. All right, so to sum up the article, you see, this is the issue, is that mathematics is being treated as an amazing new way of gaining certainty, and especially becoming scientific. And so this is where we still struggle. And main reason you should think about this is that, once again, Augustine is not, the Enlightenment doesn't just turn on the lights and get rid of Augustine. No, I mean, it's these ideas of probability, these ideas of mathematics, these are new. We'll talk about experimental science. This is a new method. But Augustine and all of those issues that had been developed in the Middle Ages are still thriving. And so read this article. I'm proud of it. I was a young kid when I wrote it, but feeling good about it. So read it. And if you want to talk about it, give me a call or something like that. I'd love to. This stuff is all fascinating to me. But the big picture is not that you're going to be asked to explain, probability and Pascal's wager. Big picture is that we see the Jansenist, the Augustinian principles continuing along as they struggle with the issue of new mathematics.